So let's just talk simply about business this morning. Since I'm in a car, I'm going to talk about cars for a minute. And here's why. I was in preparation for a class that I'm going to be teaching soon about business and money. And so I did a search because of a formula that I'm working on. I did a search on ChatGPT, and I asked, what are the top 5 ways to double your money in a year's time? And to my surprise, the number one thing, the top of the list that ChatGPT responded was flipping cars. And why that's so interesting to me is I actually did that, and I actually wrote an ebook about it. It's just short, 20 pages long. It's available on Amazon. It's called Flipping Cars. And so that came as a surprise to me, but there's a couple of things I'd like to share about my experience in flipping cars, since ChatGPT says that's the number one way that it suggests for doubling money, which is important. We'll talk about that later. What I learned, here's a couple of principles I learned in buying cars, used cars. I was focusing on sport convertibles. I realized at some point that because in California, the Bay Area, there's a lot of sunshine, there's a lot of sport convertibles. Living in the Seattle-Tacoma area, because of the weather, the rain, there's not a lot of sport convertibles. Therefore, because of the law of supply and demand, sport convertibles were a lot cheaper in the Bay Area than they were in the Seattle area. I also discovered after buying a couple of BMW Z3s that if you focus on one model of car, you can actually learn very quickly what to look for. And there were a few things, like the glove box latch was weak, the bumper down in the front of the bumper is sat low to the ground, so some people would hit curbs. There's a motor on the seats with gears that they can wear out, and that seat would jiggle back and forth. And so I could fly in and walk up to a car and go immediately to these 3 areas specifically to check the condition of that car. And so on the buying side of things, that was something I learned very easily. Now, I bought 7 BMW Z3 cars and turned around and sold them for a profit, always. And some of those cars I only owned for a week. Some of them I owned for a month. And I'll tell you later how I could buy more than 4 cars in a year. But I was able to do this, and I think one year I flipped maybe 28 or 30 cars and made money on all the cars. And so I realized, yes, you can double your money in flipping cars. So, I'll give you one more piece about that. I would buy cars for a demographic. I sold a blue BMW, it might have been a 97 Z3, to a woman. I'm going to guess she was 55 or so. Kids are gone from home. She has, she's got some money, but she's not in her youth anymore. But every woman would like to be considered a Bond girl, okay? I think the Z3 was used in a James Bond movie years ago. And so there's people who associate that car with being a Bond girl. And so I remember when the woman got in that car, and I could tell the look on her face said, how does this look on me? So she was more concerned about how she looked in that car than literally the true value of the car. So she wasn't shopping price necessarily as much as she was shopping the look of the car and how it would make her feel when she was driving the car. Now, that's a demographic. I'll give you one more experience or one more example of a demographic. My wife's uncle and I were looking and he came across the car, I think. It was a 90s Corvette, red Corvette. And I think it was around the $10,000 mark. It was in the Bay Area. And I began to negotiate with the people. It was their father's car. He had passed away. So there was a little bit of an emotional tie. But even items with an emotional tie, over time, that the desire will drop to hold that car, maintain that car, and they'll sell it. And so I got them to come down a little bit on price. We made a deal. I bought an airline ticket one way for my wife's uncle. He wanted to drive it back. He flew down and had it drove back by morning. And I said to my uncle, I said, let me tell you who's going to buy that car. He's going to have silver hair, maybe in his 60s, maybe just gone through a divorce. And his wife would never let him buy that red Corvette. And he's now at a time in his life, he's going to buy that red Corvette. Well, guess who walked in my driveway when I listed the car for sale? A silver-haired man in his 60s. I don't know the other details, but you begin to learn about different vehicles and the demographic of the buyer. So you don't focus necessarily on the car you like or the blue book value or things like this, because the market determines the value. And so anyway, I began to buy according to demographic. I had Audi TTs, I had BMWs, I had Mercedes SL500s. I had a lot of cars. And so this is a way to generate more capital through your assets rather than just your income. We'll talk more later. Thank you for listening.